Hello, BookTube. Hello, friends. Welcome to LizziefayeLovesBooks. I'm Elizabeth, and this is the month of December, of course, and I am one of the hosts for a brand new readathon called Debbie December. Hopefully, you've heard about it. There are 5 co-hosts, and I did an announcement video, and the other co-hosts did one as well. I will list all of them down in the description. But I mentioned in my announcement video that I might try to do some kind of a video regarding series books by Debbie Macomber because of the 75 books that I've read by her, I guess 76 now because I finished one and I'm in the middle of one and I'm going to be starting another one tomorrow, a buddy read. But of those books, most of them, I think, are probably series books. I didn't go back and count, but a good portion of them are. And she has a lot of series books and she has a lot of standalone books. And I am kind of low-key setting a goal to read all of the Debbie Macomber catalog. I don't know how long it will take me. And I'm not really, working at it every month, but at least every year it would be good to, check one more series off the list. And I did already finish one series this year, and I did finish a series last year, and I'm working on one right now. So I just thought it would be fun to chat a little bit about the series books because honestly, Debbie Macomber books can be confusing as far as the order of it all. And there are quite a few of her books that were published way back in the day as category romances. And a lot of those books are parts of series, but then they've been repackaged and some of them paired together, some of them paired with other books by her, some of them paired with books by other people. And, it just gets really confusing. And I'm not going to attempt to alleviate all of that confusion right now, but just to make you aware that when you are picking up any book by Debbie Macomber, if it is a book that has been published recently, check it because it perhaps has at one point or another been presented under a different title. The book you're looking at may have 2 books inside the one, and those books, may be the original titles, but the front cover of the book looks totally different, so you might think, oh, I've never read that, and then you get it home and oh my goodness, I have read both of these books, or one of the 2, or something like that. So just know that that's a thing, and I don't want you to get frustrated. So I should start by saying that I, of course, can't remember all of this in my head. I couldn't even begin to name off all of the names of the books by Debbie Macomber that I've read, but I did refer back to Goodreads and also a website that I think is very helpful, especially when you're looking at an author that has multiple books and multiple series, and that is called Book Series in Order, and I will leave a link for that down below. Really, if you just Google Debbie Macomber Books in Order, this should be one of the first things, if not the first thing, that pops up. But I will leave a link to this website in the description so that you can go and refer to it yourself. And it looks to be fairly well kept up. Like, it looks pretty recent as far as the additions. They appear to maintain it very well and add new books as they are published. So that's a good thing. All right, so as I was looking through my Goodreads and the Book Series in Order website, I was just kind of making a list of all of Debbie Macomber's series. Now, it looks like I have completely read 7 of her series. Now, as I was looking through the Goodreads lists and everything, there may be a couple of novellas or companion books that I've missed along the way, and of course, if I can, I will go back and try to get those read. But I have read the main books in 7 of these series, and so I'm considering those series done. But I have also read quite a few of the novellas, and I think that those are very good additions to each of the series, at least so far, the ones that I've read. I'm currently in the middle of a series, and then I counted 5 series of any substance that I have not started, that I have not read. And by series of any substance, I mean that when you look on the Book Series in Order website, there are a couple of series listed as series, but there's one book. Or there's a couple that have, maybe 3 books, but they don't look like they need to be read in any order. They were just kind of grouped as companion books. I could be wrong because I haven't read them yet, but I'm just not worried about those right now. I'm pretty sure they could be read as standalones, and so I'm not going to talk about those today. But the series that I have read are the Blossom Street series, the Cedar Cove series, the Rose Harbor series, which is a spinoff of Cedar Cove, the Heart of Texas series, the Navy series, the Orchard Valley series, and there are actually 2 Manning series, the Manning Men, those Manning Men, and Manning Sisters. Talking about repackaging. I'll come back to this in a minute, but that series has been packaged and repackaged, and yeah, it can get really confusing. The series that I'm currently reading right now is the Angelic Intervention series, or Angels Everywhere. There's 2 different series listed. One includes the miracle books, one does not. I have read at least 3 and maybe all 4 of the miracle books. It looks like there's 4. I forgot to go back and check if I've read all of those, but those are very good. They are really unrelated to the Surely Goodness and Mercy books, but they all have something to do with angels. So that's why one list of angelic books lists all of them together, and the other one just lists the Surely Goodness and Mercy books. So I am on book 2 of the Surely Goodness and Mercy books, and they are very entertaining. Now, there are 5 series that I have not read, and I'll just go ahead and mention them here because I don't know anything about them to tell you any further information about them. But the New Beginnings series looks to be her most recent one, and there's 3 books in that series. I have not read those. Midnight Suns is one of her older ones. These were all published as category romances. There are 6 main books, and there's a novella. Then there's one called From This Day Forward, and it looks like those are 3 different volumes with 2 shorter books, 2 novellas in each book. So there's 6 different stories and 3 books is how it looks to me, but I have not read any of those. There's a Dakota series, and there are 5 books in that series. And then the Deliverance Company series has 2 books, and then it looks like there's one more book that has 2 novellas in it. So 3 books, basically 4 stories. And incidentally, the Midnight Suns series takes place in Hard Luck, Alaska. So if you are trying to cover all the prompts for Debbie December, then you, of course, could read one of the Midnight Suns books and check that series off your list. Okay, so let's just kind of go through the series that I've read and what I know about them and the reading order and whether you should read them in order or not. Very first series that I read any of is the Blossom Street series. The very first Debbie Macomber book I read was The Shop on Blossom Street. It was recommended to me by my sister, and I would definitely recommend reading it before you read A Good Yarn. A Good Yarn is number 2 in the Blossom Street series, and both of those books are about the same main character, Lydia Hoffman. She is a cancer survivor who opens a store called The Good Yarn, or A Good Yarn. And in that first book, you meet several characters, her yarn shop patrons. And then as you go through the series, you get different settings on Blossom Street and different characters. Some of the ones are characters that you've met in the first 2 books, and then others are different. But each of the books has something to do with Blossom Street and ties back into Blossom Street. Now, that being said, I don't really think it's necessary for you to read that entire series in order. I believe, as I recall, that's been a long time, it's been several years, but as I recall, most of those books read like standalones. The exception would be book 2, A Good Yarn, I would not read until you have read Shop on Blossom Street. But there's a novella listed with that series called Christmas Letters. I've actually read that twice without even realizing that it was considered to be part of the Blossom Street series. And I went back and looked at it today, and it says that the main character writes her letters sitting in a shop or a cafe on Blossom Street. So it really doesn't have anything to do with the yarn shop. It just takes place on Blossom Street. So, that's how it connects, but you could probably pick up most of those books. Now, there are some character developments. There are characters that are main characters in the later books that have been introduced in the earlier books. But as I recall, enough information is given about them in their book that you wouldn't have to have read the first two books. So then the next big series that I read was the Cedar Cove series. And I would probably recommend reading these in order. It's very easy to tell the order of the books because of the numbers of the address. I didn't write them down here, but for instance, the first book starts with a 1. The second book starts with a 2. There is somewhere in there a single digit address. And of course that goes, that falls in with the number in the series. Where it gets a little confusing is 11 and 12, because the very last book in the series is 1225, I think Christmas Tree Lane or something. So that's book 12. You might confuse that with book 1, but it's not. So just know that it's still pretty easy to distinguish which book in series that you are reading. Now, there is one main character that appears in all the books, and that is Judge Olivia. She has a part in each of the books, but she's not the main character in each of the books. But her story does evolve and change as it goes along. And there are some other characters that you see throughout the books. But really, each book could be read as a standalone. It has its own main characters and its own story. There are some really good storylines in the Cedar Cove series. One in particular that I love was where the judge, Olivia, is dealing with a divorce case. And her ruling is that the people who are getting divorced don't make their children move from house to house. She lets the children stay in the family home and makes the adults move when it's their turn to spend time with the children. They're the ones that have to move in and out. And I know that may not be practical for most people, maybe, but the idea of it I thought was fantastic, because it really kind of sends the message of how difficult it can be on a child to have to change, keep moving back and forth and have two homes when their parents split up. And I won't give you the spoilers and tell you what happened, but the result of that book, I think, was what the judge was hoping for. And I thought it was a very good book. I couldn't tell you which book that is, but that was one of my favorite storylines in that series. And then the Rose Harbor Inn series is a spin-off series of the Cedar Cove series. It takes place in the same town. It does have one couple that we meet and know from Cedar Cove. They are, as I recall, the bed and breakfast owners in the Cedar Cove series, and they are acquainted with and friends with the main character of the Rose Harbor Inn series, and give her some advice as she's getting her business started and things like that. It's not necessary to have read Cedar Cove before you read Rose Harbor Inn. Sure, there are some characters that are from Cedar Cove, but they're not super important in the Rose Harbor series. They are side characters, and they're good characters, but you don't really have to know their whole backstory to be able to enjoy the Rose Harbor Inn series. Now, there were, I mentioned novellas earlier. There are 3 novellas, I think, or short stories in the Rose Harbor series, and I think those were all really good. One is a prequel, and then one of them, especially that I liked, was from the perspective of the male protagonist. Most of the series is from the perspective of the female protagonist. She's the owner of the inn. But the one that I thought was really good was, let me see if I can find it. I think it was called Falling for Her. And so it's from his perspective, and I thought that was really good. And then, as I recall, the other one that's a novella is kind of a bridge between the two. So, if you're one of those people that you don't think it's important to read novellas, that's okay. You do you. But I thought the novellas in that series were particularly good. So I would recommend them. All right, now the Cedar Cove series probably has the most companion books of any of the series. I own the Cedar Cove cookbook, and it's a beautiful book. I should have brought it in here. I'll try to put a picture here. But there are some novellas. There are a couple of nonfiction books. There is a Knitting with Debbie Macomber, the Cedar Cove collection. She has some knitting books that relate to the Blossom Street series as well. I think there's 3 different volumes of that. She's got quite a few nonfiction books. I don't think people realize how many nonfiction books Debbie Macomber has, and some are related to her series and some are not. But there are several. I have not read all of them. I believe that 5B Poppy Lane was maybe attached to one of the other books, probably the 5th book in the series, because it's 5B Poppy Lane. And I probably read it when I read book 5, but I don't remember. I don't have it marked off on my Goodreads. But anyway, there's Cedar Cove Christmas, things like that. So, and it looks like there is a fairly new collection of short stories, and I don't know if those have been published before. It says that they are new short stories from Cedar Cove. So that was just published, I think, in 2021. So I've got to check those out because I have not read those. So anyway, that's just my take on Rose Harbor and Cedar Cove. I don't think you necessarily have to read all of Cedar Cove in order if you don't want to, but I think it's helpful, and I think you could definitely read the Rose Harbor series before reading Cedar Cove. But if you have access to all of them, it's easier just to read everything in order. That's my ultimate recommendation, but, you know, I'm not going to yell at you if you don't. Now, my favorite series by Debbie Macomber, I will yell at you if you don't read them in order, because the mystery of the Heart of Texas series is so intriguing and so unique that I really want you to read those in order. I just read Heart of Texas last year, and I zipped through the first 6 because I just could not wait to get from one to the other. I think I had to read book 7 in print, and so it took me a little longer to get to that one, but I still did enjoy them. Now, the way the first 6 books are set up, there is an overarching mystery that is regarding this ghost town that is nearby the town of Promise where the series takes place. And the legend is that the founders of Promise were from that ghost town, and something bad happened there, and they all left it. They just left everything and went to, you know, Promise. They made a new town with the promise of, you know, a better life, and they just left everything where it was. The buildings and everything. So, of course, when people find out about it, you know, especially the teenagers, they have to go and explore. But when they go there, they feel this overwhelming sense of foreboding, and they can't wait to get out of there. So, it is super intriguing. Now, the mystery is solved by the end of book 6. And then books 7 and 8 tell you what they do after the mystery has been solved and what happens after that. So it's really important that you don't read 7 and 8 until you have read the first 6 books. Now, the other thing I just loved about these books is they're set in Texas. I love Texas. I'm not from Texas. I'm from Oklahoma. But I have a lot of family in Texas. I've spent a lot of time in Texas, and I love Texas. And the romances, I thought, were very good. I just really enjoyed them. And they are some of her older romances. I believe at least the first 6 books were first published as category romances. And I just think that they are really fun, really good. So I would highly recommend that. That being said, if you hate them, it'll be heartbreaking. But, you know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if you read one and you don't like it. But I really thought that they were very, very good. So, moving on then, a series I read earlier this year is the Navy series. There are 6 books there, and I read them in order, but it didn't really stand out as a series that you would have to read in order. And it was just okay. I mean, it was fine. I enjoyed them, but, you know, I'm not raving about the Navy series like I am raving about the Heart of Texas series. Same goes for Orchard Valley. There are 4 books in the Orchard Valley series, and I recall enjoying them, but, you know, they didn't wow me. And then the Manning series. Okay, now it looks like there are 2 Manning series. There's Those Manning Men, which is 4 books, and then the Manning Sisters, which is 2 books. I don't remember if there's any connection between them or not. There must be. But this is an example of packaging and repackaging. Okay, so there are 4 books in the series called Those Manning Men. And the first 2 books, I believe one of them is called Marriage of Inconvenience and Stand-in Wife. Those books were packaged again later in a book called The Manning Brides. And then books 3 and 4 were published in one volume called The Manning Grooms. So then fast forward into, more recent years, there is what appears to be a brand new book in the Manning series. I think it's called Springtime Sunday. And it doesn't look like it's related to those at all, but it's actually just a repackaging of the first 2 books, which were originally published as Marriage of Inconvenience and Stand-in Wife, and then again republished as The Manning Brides. So you see what I'm saying. At this point, it doesn't look like that the Manning Grooms have been republished into a current volume, but that's probably coming. I don't know. Anyway, just be aware that this happens, and, just because the cover looks different, just because the title is different, doesn't mean that you haven't read it. Okay, then I've already talked about the Angel series. There's kind of 2 main groups of the Angel books. There's the Miracle books, Mrs. Miracle and Mr. Miracle, and then Surely Goodness and Mercy. I don't know if all 7 of the other Angel books are all having to do with Surely Goodness and Mercy, or if there's only a few of them that are. I don't know. I'm still reading that series, and I'm reading them in order. So, I think that's probably a series that you wouldn't have to read in order, because each book they are dealing with different people. So it's probably fine to pick any of the Angel books up, and you would be just fine. Okay, so I guess that's about all I wanted to share with you regarding Debbie Macomber series. Now this is definitely not all the knowledge about Debbie Macomber series. There is so much I don't know, so much I can't remember, and I'm just sharing my opinions with you as far as whether you should read them in order or not. Really, the main ones that I definitely would read in order, just to sum things up, is the Heart of Texas series, and then also the first 2 of the Blossom Street series. And if you are looking at the whole catalog of Debbie Macomber and wondering where in the world do I start, any of her Christmas books right now, 'tis the season, you could really pick up any of those and be just fine, unless it's maybe one of the Cedar Cove series books. But she's got quite a few Christmas-themed books, and, you can't go wrong with any of those standalones. But if it's not Christmas time and you like to read seasonally, I think the best place to start with Debbie Macomber is A Shop on Blossom Street. That is just a fantastic book. It is not one of her oldest ones. She had gotten a lot of books under her belt by the time she got to that one, and I think it shows, and it's just a really nice book. So if you're wondering where to start with Debbie Macomber, that would be my recommendation. So let me know how many Debbie Macomber books you have read. She's got a lot. And that is all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a great day. Merry Christmas. Read a good book, and God bless you.